Okay, so welcome to part two of things that make a TBM. So in the last video, we ended on the pilot door and some of the benefits and convenience features of the pilot door. So today, we are going to make our way around the aircraft, but let's take a look here real quick at the front baggage compartment. So right behind the engine firewall is a baggage compartment that has a maximum capacity of 110 pounds. And this is really nice and convenient because it allows you to store some of the items that you would not want to take up space in the inside or rear baggage compartment. For example, like the engine covers, the inlet blockers, and oil and so on. We've got a tow bar in here. So as you can see, it's more of a just a mechanical resource type compartment. Sure, you could put luggage in here like a suitcase and so on, but it's working very well for some of the items that we use to take care of the aircraft. As you can see, it's a maximum capacity of 110 pounds. So one thing to note is that the weight capacity of this compartment is 10 pounds more than the maximum capacity of the Meridian's baggage compartment. So that's the front baggage compartment. Let's make our way around the left wing here to the aft baggage compartment and the door back here. So this is a very large door, as you can see. It is quite large. It is one piece. So as I open the door here, you'll see it's very much like a Pilatus door. It's all one piece, raises like that. And then you've got the steps that drop down here. They're dampened. So they drop down like that. So as you can see, it's one piece as opposed to the Meridian, which has a clamshell style. So you've got like a top half of the door that would open up. And then the bottom half of the door drops down, which houses the steps. So slight difference there. But as you can see, it's a very wide door, so it allows you to easily enter and exit the aircraft, and also makes it easy to get access to the luggage compartment as well. Okay, so there are a lot of videos on YouTube that talk about the TBM and so on, but what I'll try to do in this section of the video is talk about some things that we find to be benefits with the TBM, and just the overall design of this door and how it just makes life easier for entering, exiting, and loading the TBM. Okay, so obviously the door is larger, and that also translates to making it easier to enter the aircraft and also exit the aircraft, right? So if you had a smaller door, say this portion of the door would actually be right here. So your door frame would be something more like this, as you would find maybe in some of the earlier 700 series TBMs or Meridian. But with the door being larger, it also allows you to access this portion of the floor and baggage compartment without the obstruction of the stairs. So in something like the Meridian, if you're trying to access something on the floor with a narrow door opening, you'd be working over the steps like this and kind of leaning, and this would be in the way. But with the TBM's larger door, it allows you to get right up to the door sill, and the frame of the TBM. And so you can just work on things here. And also it allows you to have direct access to the baggage compartment. As you can see, it's right here. Of course, we have the seat removed for this reason, just to make it a lot easier to access the baggage compartment. But you can see there's nothing here obstructing me and preventing me from getting right up close to the aircraft. So it turns out this surface is also very useful. I use it quite a bit for setting up my laptop so I can update the databases. You know, that way I'm not putting the laptop on the wing or taking it inside the cockpit with me. So I can just set up the laptop here, plug in the SD cards, and do all my updating right here. So that's an added benefit of having this extra space, and it's almost like a little table of sorts. So again, just a very practical design with this door. Okay, for the next feature, let's take a look inside the cabin here. As you can see, there's a seat missing right here. Typically, the full configuration of this cabin would have 4 seats in the back. We've only got 3 seats back here. We very rarely ever fly with a very, very full, like, max aircraft with everyone on board. So we've taken out this seat to make it easier to access the baggage compartment. But one thing I want to highlight is just how easy it is to reconfigure the cabin back here. Okay, so under the seat, there's just this panel here that you can remove, and you can see there's a lever here. You lift the lever up, and when you lift the lever all the way up, it releases the pins, and you can move the seat, remove the seat, so on. So it's that easy. There are no special tools that you need to take a seat out or put a seat in. It's all built into the design of the aircraft. Also, another thing to keep in mind is all the weight and balance numbers are also built into the POH. So you don't have to go and run special numbers for every single configuration or get a new weight and balance. If you took a seat out, everything is pre-calculated for you, and you just run your weight and balance based on the configuration of your cabin. Okay, so that does it for this door and cabin area. One thing I do also want to mention before we move on is the weight capacity of the baggage compartment in the TBM is 220 pounds. That's 120 pounds more than the Meridian. And so between the front baggage compartment and the aft baggage compartment, you've got 330 pounds of luggage capacity in the aircraft. So that is significantly more than what you would find in the Meridian. Moving on from the cabin, there is one thing I'd like to touch on, and that is how stable the aircraft is. Now, I've never really read anywhere online about the stability of the aircraft, but one thing that we've really noticed, coming from the Meridian, for example, is just how much more stable this airframe is, and also how strong it is. So we picked up on this very early on, flying through turbulence. You can really feel just how strong and stiff this airframe is. And after flying in the Phenom for a little bit, I can say that this feels very much more like a business jet in terms of stiffness and how it handles bumps and turbulence. We noticed that very early in ownership of this aircraft. So that stability also translates into the cabin and to passenger comfort. So we've had passengers fly in the Meridian and feel motion sick and suffer the effects of motion sickness. They fly in the TBM and they feel totally fine. No traces of motion sickness. So, we can relate that directly to the stability of the aircraft. And the reason why this aircraft is so stable is a few things, but I think especially what translates into the cabin and what the passengers feel has to do with yawing, especially the yaw component of this aircraft. So when looking at the airframe, you can just see it's a bigger airframe than the Meridian, but I think one of the key things to look at here is your arm, the distance between the CG and your empennage. So that distance, that arm between CG and empennage in the TBM is much larger or longer than you would find in the Meridian. So that means that translates to your control surfaces in the back having a lot more control authority over the entire airframe, right? So you've got a bigger rudder and a bigger vertical fin as well. Couple that with a very advanced yaw dampener. And so the yaw dampener doesn't have to work as hard in this because you've got that arm and your rudder is more effective. So the yaw dampener is not working as hard. It has smaller inputs going into the rudder, as well as these strakes here. You've got 2 strakes, one on each side, that also improve the stability of the airframe. So there's a lot of things built into the airframe to help make it more stable. And I think these features translate to a much more comfortable ride for passengers. Okay, so with that said, let's move on to the wing portion here. And I'd like to focus a bit on this aileron system. You can see This is a very different, very unique aileron system. So we've got an aileron here. There's an aileron trim tab. Then we have the flap, but we've got the spoiler here that actuates with the aileron. So there's a few things going on here. So you can see the flap is here. It's a very long flap. If you take a look here, you can see how long this flap is. And then you have a very small aileron. So you can see how the spoiler is located right in front of the flap. So that's also really key to this and why this spoiler is here. So as the aircraft slows down, you have less air going over the surface of the wing, as well as your control surfaces. And so as the aircraft slows down, your control surfaces lose effectiveness. When you're flying at, say, 200 knots airspeed, so through the air, your aileron is very effective, as well as all of the control surfaces in the aircraft. So small deflections in your aileron is going to translate to a certain motion or deflection of the airframe. Now, if you slow the airframe way down to, say, 90 knots, right? If you deflected your aileron, say, an inch up or an inch down, it's not going to have the same effectiveness and control authority over the airframe as it did when you were flying at 200 knots. So here's the problem, right? Say you're on approach, you're landing, and you're very slow. You're 85 knots, and you're needing, of course, to control the roll of the aircraft. Well, at that speed, the size of these ailerons, not really enough to provide, the best positive feedback and control authority that you would need. So what TBM did here is they built in the spoiler to help with the slow speed characteristics of the aileron. And so what's happening here is as your flap extends, right, it increases the lift over the wing. So the way it does that is it increases the chord line, so it makes the wing feel or appear longer than it really is. So the air traveling over the wing starts traveling faster, and that's a way to cheat and provide more lift at slower air speeds. Of course, the byproduct of that is more drag. So when you're going faster, you don't want your flaps down, so on. But say we're flying slow on approach, our flaps are extended, the air flowing over the top of this wing here is moving faster now. So what this piece does, the spoiler, is say we're on approach and we're at 85 knots. The air flowing over this wing, let's just say for this purpose, this portion of the wing, the air is flowing at approximately 85 knots. Over here, where the flap is, let's say because the flap is extended, the air is flowing at 100 knots, right? Because it's a greater distance, the air is splitting at the leading edge and it needs to catch up and meet at the trailing edge. So it has to travel faster, let's just say 100 knots. So the air is flowing faster here. So that means if you had a device, here, like an air brake, for example, there's a lot more air flowing over the wing that is going to put pressure on that device versus the same device out here, right? So what they've done is put the spoiler here and coupled it with the aileron. So when you actuate the aileron up, you've got air on this side rushing and moving faster. So this little spoiler right here is going to have a very dramatic effect on that accelerated air flowing over the top of the wing. And that's going to provide additional downforce or effectiveness to this aileron. So say the aileron goes up, it produces lift under the wing, right? And that's going to drop the wing. So if this portion of the wing is being pushed down, right, or pulled down because of the lift under the wing. But for the same action, what you've actually got going on here is the air flowing above the wing is then pushing against the spoiler and pushing the wing down. So you have air accelerated because of the flap extended, pushing down here on the spoiler, and then wind or air under here pulling the wing down. So with all that being said, this is a design that was formulated to solve this problem, and it seems to work very well. So I hope that's clear, and that explains the reason for this this spoiler and why it's placed here in front of the flap, and then also why it's tied in with the aileron. Okay, this is the end of the video, as well as a two-part series. I hope it was informative and provided some more insight into the TBM, as well as some things that you may not find on the website or in publications. If there's any questions with anything that I've covered here in these videos, please feel free to reach out in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer those comments within a timely manner. Thanks for watching the video, and we'll see you guys in the next one. All right, so that's it for back here. Let's get this put away. We'll get this door closed. I didn't turn the power on. But this was placed very strategically. Let me know in the comments below. I don't know.